Welcome, tribe. Thank you for joining us. I am Blake.
Zach. Nice to have you here.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about the wild man versus the savage man. Basically, the difference between toxic masculinity and being a conscious man, fully embodying your feminine and your masculine side. Yeah. So first, I think we're going to start off with kind of society's view on the masculine and feminine. What have you experienced out there in the world?
Yeah, so for me, I've done a lot of work to try to embody more of the feminine within myself. Figuring out what that means as a man to embody feminine energy. Because oftentimes in life we're taught not to do that as men. We're taught that that's sissy, or that is girly, or whatever it was as kids. There were so many different insults about if you embodied feminine energy.
Yeah.
So learning, like, how can you do that as a man in the society that we live in? And I feel like we're at a turning point where femininity, both in men and women, is coming and being empowered, and it's shifting into something powerful. Or maybe we're acknowledging it as something powerful, whereas before it was viewed as something less than men.
Yeah, it's true. Being in balance with our masculine and feminine is very important. Back in the days, the masculine was the dominant creature on our planet. We were so into being hunter-gatherers and actually taking on the role of being the providers for so long. Even in our financial system, we got paid more. So we were looked up as this like masculine creature that needed to provide security for the feminine. And because of that, we never really got in contact with our own feminine side. We kind of neglected it because we had to be the hunter-gatherers out there in the world. So it's put a diversity not only within ourselves, but also with our female counterparts, which has been really big. And now in society, we're finally getting to a point where we are seeing the balance, at least. Yeah, what are some of the things we could do? You're really connected with your feminine side, and I think it's so beautiful to see a man that has been able to fully embody that within him. And I love sharing energy with you because you really bring that out of me, and I would like to hear what are some of the things you've done to help you embody that.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I've done is learn to sit with softness and see what that is, see if that feels like. And also I have 2 young daughters, and just having those daughters and observing them and seeing what feminine energy is at such a pure level. I think for me there was oftentimes when I viewed femininity as like a toxic thing. And so being able to see the pure form of what feminine energy is has been really healing for me to understand kind of where females come from to begin with. And then it's given me a lot of compassion, and that compassion has led to softness. So kind of learning to embody more of that softness, more of the receptivity.
The compassionate man.
The compassionate man, yeah. And learning to allow that to kind of soften and open up my heart a bit more. I think in a big way that's what it's been, is it's learning to live with an open heart, which comes with compassion, of course. But some of the things that I've done is a lot of energy healing. So I've done a lot of energy healing that focuses on the balance of masculine and feminine. And being able to lean into my intuition, which is something that we all have. Intuition is an aspect of ourselves. So understanding that we all have male and female within us. That we all have this aspect of ourselves that can receive messages and be in that softness, and then learning to let my masculine support that. So it's almost like I receive the message from my feminine aspect of self, and then the masculine aspect of self is the action taker, the one that takes that message of what do I need to do, sitting in the stillness of that, and then putting it into action.
Yeah.
And I think that learning to embrace both aspects of myself so that I'm not searching for something outside of me to complete that aspect of myself is an ongoing practice, but something that's been really powerful for me to try to embrace, of like, how can I embody the feminine energy that I've been searching for outside myself, and then how can I support that with the masculine energy that I embody in being man.
That's such good. That's so good, and brings up really good points, because what you explained is what I feel is really needed right now. Then you did it within yourself. We need to spend time not only with ourselves, with that feminine aspect of ourselves, which is the emotional body, which is when we get into the emotional body and we feel what we are feeling and actually sit and hold that feeling. That's the feminine side. Then the masculine side steps in and puts it into action.
Right.
So that's beautiful that you're able to connect those two together.
Absolutely.
That is awesome. It brings up a really good point, because I feel like now that we're getting into this level of balance between our masculine and feminine, I feel like there's going to be a time where we're going to have imbalance. So a lot of what I'm thinking is like, so a lot of the foods that we eat, a lot of the things that we're putting into our bodies are actually changing our chemical compound of who we are as men. We're eating more soy. We're not eating food out in the wild anymore that is wild game. We're also having less testosterone than our grandparents have, or my father's father, my father's father's father. So we are becoming more domestic in a way, and almost lost that aspect of this hard aggression, savage man that we had to be back in the days, and are able to get to this point where we're at right now. But because of that, the females, our female counterparts that are out there in the world, are becoming more empowered. They're seeing this level of empowerment within themselves that they're able to grab a hold of. And there's going to be an imbalance. Nothing ever just comes into balance, because you don't know what balance is until we see both sides of the scale.
Right.
So I feel like we're in a point now. Zach and I are in a men's group that we just started. It's only been going on for a month. We've only had one meeting so far. It was a beautiful meeting. It was great, and we were holding space for each other. Yeah. And we actually had, a couple of men. You were one of them that opened up, and it was nice to see that we were able to hold space for other men and that can show their emotions.
Absolutely.
The imbalance I'm talking about is we need to support our fellow man, because what's going to happen at some point, and this is just a theory, that we are going to hit a pivotal point where women become dominant and take on the role of being masculine. They are women are out there getting more degrees than men. There are more women enrolled in schools than men are in college classes. They're finding advancements in jobs faster than men are. We are at a point where women are now stepping up and becoming that masculine aspect in society. So,
I almost feel like that's the women's quest to embody the masculine within themselves as well. And they're like, all right, like, no, we're equal, and men are starting to view that as the same way of like, there's this equality, and so females are stepping into that balance within themselves and embodying some of the masculine as well. Yeah. And so it's important for men to do the same with the feminine so that we can meet them in that space of like,
so we could support them.
Exactly.
So when this imbalance happens and they become that strong aspect of themselves and they don't need us anymore, how are we going to support each other as well as support them? Because when we do that in a correct way, then it will be so much easier to come back into balance. There will not be a fight. There will not be a struggle, because we would be standing by their sides the whole time.
Absolutely.
I think that's a beautiful thing that we need to do. Which is why it's important to have these men groups and have these conversations nowadays. So he spoke on something really beautiful. I'd like you to touch on it more. You talked about your feminine in the wild and how you viewed her. I thought that was a very beautiful way. Would you share that?
Absolutely. Yeah, so the first time I kind of tried to sit with what my feminine was, it was really this image of this woman out in nature, and she was just very, very soft and embodied, but also very powerful as well. And she emerged from the woods out in nature, and she was nude the way that she appeared to me, but it wasn't like out of this place of sexual, like trying to get something. It was just like, no, this is who I am, this is my body, this is me. And then the masculine came out and met that, and he was like, he was a deeply connected individual. So this feminine came out, and she was very wild. It was like the wild woman. And the masculine was like almost ancestral in some ways, the way he appeared to me. And so when I did a little bit of a meditation before this, what each one was saying to each other, the masculine was saying, I need you to embody that strength.
Yes.
She said to him, I need you to embody that softness. So it's almost talking about what we're saying here, where each aspect of the self, each aspect of male and female, needs to begin to almost embody what the other person has embodied for centuries. You know, men are viewed as the strong one, feminine are viewed as the soft one. And they're asking each other to embody those qualities for each other. So there's the softness in the man and the strength in the woman.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like that. We need to, and that's cool that you did that within yourself, that your feminine was able to meet your masculine. We just did a meditation right before this video where we sat with our feminine and saw her, the colors that she had, saw what she looked like, and then asked if she had a message to give to us. And then when we did the same with the masculine, and then we sat with both of them together to see what connected them together. This is a really good way for introduction for anyone wanting to get in contact with their masculine or feminine, male or female, to do this type of practice, because it allows you to see your masculine in a beautiful way, see your feminine in a beautiful way, and then see them together and how they coincide, how they bond together. And they might not share the same entity, they might be completely different, but even putting them into your headspace together and putting them into your heart, you will begin to embody what it means to be in balance. And you know, that's a big part of it.
I think the first time I did that meditation was something like 8 years ago, and what was interesting for me in that is that they weren't actually looking at each other the first time. They were kind of looking the opposite direction, as though they weren't acknowledging one another. And so being able to recognize that there was a disconnection between my masculine and my feminine aspects of self, and then getting them to look at each other, and then seeing what that brought up within me, helped me to understand the ways in which I was disconnected from my masculine aspects of self and feminine aspects of self, and how they could begin to relate to one another, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And then the other part of that was to start to recognize the qualities in people, in women, that I was attracted to, and to see what those qualities were, and to see how I could begin to embody those qualities inside of myself as well. Understanding that those aspects that I was attracted to out there were reflections of aspects of myself that I hadn't quite embodied yet, or hadn't quite learned how to tap into.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So it's so beautiful to be sitting here with you, who has been able to be so in balance a lot of times, and we're not always in balance.
It's ongoing.
It's ongoing. It's something we always kind of have to work through. A good friend of mine, Nick Davison, speaks on rite of passage for men. So I think this is important, and this is why men's groups, I think, are also important too, is because as us men start to do this work and we start to embody our feminine and our masculine and find the balance within ourselves, we are going to need to call in people that we trust. We need to be integrated. We can't do this work alone. We need community. We are social creatures. We need to have this community with us to help support us on our journey, which brings us into a rite of passage. Once we learn how or figure out where that balance is and we see it, we then need to have a rite of passage, because we've been so told that we need to calm ourselves down, stop crying, you're a man. These things that we've been told as kids, that we made agreements with ourselves were bad or evil, which are our shadow sides, our dark sides.
Right.
Once we tap into this and open it up, we need to create a rite of passage. But we need a rite of passage that fits into our modern society, something that allows us to kind of be able to go back out in the world, like a bar mitzvah would be. Totally. For,
Yeah.
So we need that for men now, and I think this is very important.
Yeah, how do you have a rites of passage from childhood into manhood?
Yeah.
From adolescence into adulthood.
Yeah.
So what sort of rites of passage have you
So some of
explored?
the ones that I've explored is fire walking. That is a big one. To once you've been in balance with yourself, how do you gracefully walk over a fire, but also hold the strength of a man in you to walk over a fire? And this is an old tradition. There's also traditions where you would go out in the woods for a night with basically nothing, not have much at all. These are kind of harsh. So what I'm trying to figure out is, what could we do that's more not normal, but more fits into today's society? What is something that we can do to really get into it? And one of the things that I explored with, which I'm going to explore with on one of our next men's group, is dancing with other men. We go to an ecstatic dance, and if any of you have ever been to an ecstatic dance, it is this beautiful wave of music that creates an emotion. And it goes up to chaos, drops back down, comes back up, and then settles. You don't wear shoes, you don't talk, and you basically are in the present moment, connecting with other people. And I've been going there and dancing with other men and finding intimate connections with men on the dance floor, which it seems easy to dance with other women. I see women dancing with other women, but you don't really see men dancing with other men.
Yeah.
And I think when you fully embody that, that would be a great rites of passage.
I think
Go
so,
out to a random place and try to dance with a man.
Right.
And embody that and see if you can it just be playful and fun, and it doesn't have to be sexual.
Right.
Intimacy doesn't mean sex.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that, because at the last ecstatic dance I was at, there was this very tall man, and at one point we just started like dancing with each other, and it was almost like we were feeding into each other and embracing more of our masculine with each other just through dancing with one another.
That's great.
And it was like this reflection. It was almost a reflection for each other of like, oh, I see you, and just like this connection that happened as a result of dancing with each other. So that was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's a beautiful rite of passage.
Absolutely.
That's one way that we can do it, and I'm sure there's other ways that will come up as we explore this more.
Yeah.
But I think those are really good aspects. The other thing too that I'd like to really touch on is some of the key fundamental differences between men and women that I've noticed. So the masculine, as we spoke into, are really good about the movement, like you were talking about, like you sit with your emotions, which is the feminine side. The masculine's really good at pushing, moving, forward moment. We want to do. We're doers. We go out there and we do. Action taken. Exactly. Yeah. Which makes us want to become problem solvers. A lot of times in relationships, which is very important, because that is the bond between the masculine and feminine. How can we as men be a safe container for women to express their emotions? Because for years women have been ostracized and belittled, and basically have generations of pain that they're dealing with inside them, that they've passed down from their grandmas, their great grandmas, to all the way down to them. So I would like to speak on us men to not be problem solvers when these things arise. You don't have to solve a problem when a woman says she feels sad or is having problems at work. What we need to start doing for our female counterparts is holding space for them. Just being there and listen.
Yeah.
And they will respect that so much because we are just there understanding what they have to say.
They feel heard. They feel acknowledged. They feel met.
They feel met.
Yeah.
And we need to meet them.
Yes.
And then thank them for it.
Mm-hmm.
No problem solved. Thank you for sharing your emotions. Thank you for expressing.
Being raw and vulnerable and real with
Exactly.
authentic.
And we don't have to solve the problems.
Right.
We don't have to, come up with something that will change, because it doesn't have to change. Just letting it out sometimes is what it's needed.
Yeah, just getting it out, being heard, expressing it. And I think it's been helpful in my journey to understand the difference between these two, of just understanding what are the characteristics of masculine and feminine within ourselves, and that analytical problem solver is the very masculine energy, and then the kind of intuitive and like raw and maybe emotional. I think emotional can probably go into both sides, but
Definitely.
it tends to be more of like a feminine, viewed as like a feminine quality of self, of that receptive, the soft, whereas that masculine tends to be the hard and the strong.
Mm-hmm.
So again, coming back to learning how to balance that within ourselves helps us to be able to show up for the other person in a way to where they're like, oh, you're not just trying to like solve my problem and be like, okay, what's the problem here, let me do this for you, but you're actually just listening and being present and being like, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's a really, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. And it's beautiful too, because as we do this work as men and we start to feel into our own power and find balance within ourselves, we're going to want to go out and share it, just like we're doing now. And when you're in your power and you're going out and you're sharing what you've learned, sometimes you might have a goddess at home that feels like she's not the one satisfying you anymore, because you're feeling fulfilled and satisfied because you've done the work and you're sharing it with people. Being men, we're going to go out and do that. We're going to share it.
Yeah.
So that's a good question, is how do we show that love and bring that compassion and bring that sensitivity and that drive that we have from doing our work back home to our loved ones?
Yeah, how do we find that balance between showing up in our relationship for this person that we love and showing up for our work in the world as well? That's definitely something that I've been learning how to balance, and I won't say that I'm a master at that by any means.
Well, communication, I think, is the first step.
Yeah, authentic communication, just being able to experience what is and be transparent about it, just be real about it. I think there's such a, like, men don't want to be vulnerable a lot of the time because they feel like they're going to be judged or seen as weak. Whereas, like, if you can learn to be transparent about what's going on and just say, like, this is my authentic experience in this moment.
Yeah.
And then understanding, I think another thing in the communication of it is, what is your intent? You know, are you sharing something to control the situation and control the outcome? Or are you sharing something just to relate and to be like, this is what I'm going through, this is my experience? Because I feel like so many times when we're just trying to relate, it can be a very vulnerable thing to be like, shit, I don't know how this is going to be received by this person.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to share it authentically. And then there's so much respect that's reciprocated from just showing up authentically and sharing what is.
Yeah, that's a good thing to do for us.
Yeah, if you're trying to control, like if you're telling them what they think they want to hear, I guess. You know, like,
they'll see that.
They see right through that shit.
Through that shit. Yeah. But so showing up authentically and being vulnerable with them.
Yeah.
And coming home and being like, babe, I had a great day and I feel full of love and it's amazing, and being able to take that love and overflow it onto your lover. Being able to take all that fulfillment that we got in the world and pouring it into our lovers that are at home, our goddesses or gods that we connect with, is it's very important. And if you're having problems at home with that, if you're having relationship problems because of what you're doing out there in the world, or you're just someone who works a lot and you come home and you feel like you don't have the energy for your loved one, you could do things that are a lot more on the mellow side that don't use a lot of your energy. Tantric is really a great way. It's an energy flow, breathing practice you can do with your lover.
Giving a massage. Right?
Yeah. Totally, and even if that is like too much, like you can just drop in and sit and stare into each other's eyes. If you just sit in front of your lover and just stare into their eyes, you know what happens? Your heartbeats start to match up. You start to energetically connect in ways that you don't even need words for. You find a connection between your lover that you don't need words, you don't need physical touch, you don't need anything but breath, and it becomes one with you. You will feel an energetic connection between you and your lover, and sometimes that is just a good start to find reconnected with your lover and take all of what you're doing out in the world back home to fill your lover up with what you're learning. Absolutely. So it's good. It's good to do that. Another thing that I've always had a problem with, and I'm currently doing a 20-day meditation to transcend my ego, is as I do this work and I'm learning how to find my balance within myself, I find egotistical tendencies coming up inside me. Absolutely. Because I feel stronger. I feel more confident to express myself in a vulnerable way. I can go to a party and sit down and talk to someone, open up, and I've cried in front of strangers. You've seen it. Yeah. And just open up.
It's a beautiful thing to...
And I had sometimes attached my ego to my ability to be vulnerable with people. And so that's something that I'm dealing with a lot right now, is how do I transcend the ego and truly just be authentic for who I am. And I don't know, do you have any tips on that? What's your opinion on how to release that aspect of ego and just be who you are without being proud of what you have learned to the point where you're not just being who you are, you're being more attached to what you believe?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the word there. Like, for me, the ego is like attachment. When we have attachment to something, like you were saying, you pride yourself sometimes on being able to show up vulnerably, which I think is a beautiful thing to be able to do. But having attachment to that quality and saying, like, being able to observe the quality and notice the beauty in it, and also, like, that's a beautiful thing to be able to look at it and be able to show up vulnerably. I feel like, as somebody who embodies a lot of masculine energy, that shows the work that you've done to work on the emotional side of yourself so that you can be able to do that sort of thing. I think it only becomes ego when we have attachment to it and identify as like, oh yeah, that's like a gift that I have. I'm fucking a badass for being able to do this. Whereas like if we're just like, wow, like what a beautiful thing that I'm able to show up and just be real and be vulnerable and be raw in front of total strangers.
Yeah.
And just notice it and be like, wow, that's pretty fucking cool. And like give yourself a pat on the back for that, but like you don't have to be like, oh, and I'm such a badass because I can do this. And I don't see that in you. So.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. I feel like sometimes we get a lot in our own head
Totally.
of like what we believe we might be doing. But thank you for speaking into that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So a couple of tips on how to start doing this work. There's some things that I have been delving into a lot lately is shadow work. So I've been noticing the more I do my shadow work, it brings up these agreements I made with myself as a child to harden myself in a way. I don't come from a very rich family. I don't come from a lot of support behind me. So I've always had to embody this masculine aspect of hunter-gatherer. I work my ass off. I collect what I need to collect. I buy a house. I like do what I need to do, and it's go, 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 like create. And because of that, I neglected my feminine side and didn't nurture her. Though I've kept building up this security that I needed, I didn't nurture her. So shadow work, what it allowed for me to do was actually um, sit down with this toxic masculine aspect of myself and feel what these emotions were, whether I was, you know, being sexist, or if I felt loneliness or abandonment, whatever these feelings were. The anger was a really big one for me, and so here's a couple of tips that I've learned. First of all, when you feel angry, you want to acknowledge it. We want to acknowledge it, that anger is arising inside of us, and to you might not be able to at the moment when you're feeling angry, but to then later go home, take the situation that made you feel angry, and live it again inside you. Bring it up inside you until you feel the anger, where it strives from. Does it strive from your stomach? Does it come from your heart? Is it coming from your head? Find the location of it. Once you got it, I want you to fully embody it. Fully feel it until it fills your whole entire body, to the end of your toes, the end of your fingernails, to your rage. Your blood is boiling, and you might cry, you might tense up all your muscles, grind your teeth, and feel it. Once you are fully embodied that pain, it allows you to see where it strives from. Where did that anger come from? And then you're able to be like, wow, I got angry because this person said I was being an asshole or something. And then you're like, well, why did they say that? Am I an asshole? Was I being an asshole? Or was I being egotistical? What was it that created that? And even further back, what created it in the beginning? Why do I get angry? Why can't I not keep my temper all the time? Maybe the anger comes from being repressed as a kid and being told that you can't be angry.
Right. So it sounds like rather than suppressing the anger when it comes up, you're finding a healthy way to be able to acknowledge it and move the energy around it.
Yeah.
Because it's energy, when we have that thing. And so being able to find some way to express it, like even just having an experience, and maybe like you said, we can't in that moment give it expression, but we can get in the car afterwards and then just fucking scream.
Yeah.
And just like move it in some way, or like go home and punch a pillow, or like go to the gym and work out. Like those are ways of moving energy, right? Or going to a dance and just like dancing around and letting that shit have expression instead of just being like disowning these aspects of self and like pushing it down and repressing it,
which puts it more into the shadow.
Yeah, it's like pushing down a pressure cooker until finally it just like bursts in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
And that's what I see a lot happening is like,
oh, we see it on the news.
Yeah, it's just like it's being pushed down so much that at a certain point it just bursts, and it's like a kettle going.
That's a great point. Turn on the news. Who are doing these school shootings? It's men. Who are going out there doing the most of the murders? It's men. Who's out there doing robbing and doing these really violent crimes? It's mostly men. And it's because we haven't done our inner work. It's because there is this huge toxic masculinity out there in society, and you turn on the news, it's there. We see it. It is there. We need to transcend that. We need to do our inner work and sit with these emotions and feelings and truly hold them, cradle them like a fucking baby, and rock yourself if you need to, so you could truly feel what it feels like to be angry, to feel loneliness, so you could bring it into the light. Because once you bring it into the light, you get to walk with anger as a friend. I learned anger gives me courage. Anger makes me speak with passion.
Yeah. Anger
helps me define whether I should be in a conversation with someone or when to protect myself. Hey, you've crossed the line.
Right.
Anger's a friend of mine.
Yeah, another exercise I've come to learn is like when you're feeling angry, you can actually imagine yourself as like a volcano. And your anger is like this lava fucking erupting, right?
Yeah.
And just allowing that shit to pour down, like actually feeling it energetically just like erupt out of the top and letting it like flow down and just feeling it and being like, whoa, noticing the way it feels in your body. Where do you feel it in your solar plexus or in your heart or whatever? And just noticing that and visualizing this lava erupting, because it is, right? It's like this, And it's our power, you know, in a lot
It's our
of ways.
power.
It's
It
just maybe
is.
being expressed in a way that could be redirected into something more powerful.
Beautiful, something beautiful.
Yeah. For a long time, I liked to paint, and so I would just get a canvas and I'd get paint. I just fucking throw it, dude. It would get wild. Like I had more paint on me than would be on the canvas. But it was about moving energy and just giving expression to this experience in a way that felt contained yet also unleashed.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is really good to hear. I love that. I think that's a great way to express and release it, which is what we need to do. When we feel these emotions, I think a lot of people get scared that they don't know how to release them and feel them. When you have an emotion, the Buddhists really talk about is detaching yourself from your emotions. So one of the last things I do when I do this work, when I finally find the release of that, so I don't still sit there and vibrate anger inside me, I learned this beautiful meditation by Satguru, and he actually will speak in breath, I am not my mind, in out breath, I am not my body. And by doing this, you detach your physical body from your spiritual body. So if your physical body is feeling pain, feeling loneliness and stuff, and you sat with it and you did the work, or you painted and released that in a way, you don't want to walk around carrying that for the rest of your day. You want to be able to go back out in society and be okay. So by realizing that you are a spirit or a soul that's driving a vessel that's filled with emotions, you can detach yourself from this. You can detach yourself from your mind, from your body, and realize that you're spirit, and look at yourself from an outside perspective, so you don't carry that with you all day long.
Becoming the observer, so to speak, of like, oh, I notice that I'm feeling angry, then you're no longer identifying with being angry necessarily, but being able to observe the experience and say like, oh, that's interesting, this body is experiencing this emotion right now. Yeah.
That's good.
I like it.
Cool. I think we covered some good stuff. I don't know, do we want to, should we read this poem to close it off?
Yeah.
Would you read it?
Yeah. Alright. Dear men, thank you for your desire, your passion, your want and your primal nature. Thank you for your rawness and your potent sexuality. Thank you for your thirst and your hunger. Thank you for your willingness to open and receive. Thank you for your minds, your hearts, your bodies, and your fire. Thank you for your soft, your wild, your tender, and your fierce. Thank you for your bashfulness, your confidence, your whimsy, and your stability. Thank you for your anger and your righteousness. Thank you for your sorrow and your joy. Thank you for your fears and your courage. Thank you for your hopes and your dreams. Thank you for your wickedness and your love. Thank you for contrast. Thank you for reflecting. Thank you for you. You are so beautiful. And that's by Cynthia Rose.
Thank you, Cynthia. It's a beautiful poem. Really resonated with it. Well, thank you guys for joining us. I hope what we spoke in today that you, some of you resonated with. If there's anything that you have questions about or anything that did resonate with you, please put a comment below and let us know what you think.
And if you're in the Santa Fe area and you want some support in this, come check out one of the men's groups, circles.
Yeah.
That will be led.
Conscious men. Yeah, thank you. Namaste.